And finally, new rule, stop threatening to put everyone in jail who you just don't like, the way Senator Rand Paul is trying to do now with Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is back in the news because Senator Paul, formerly of the privacy is everything wing of the Republican Party, got hold of Dr. Fauci's personal diary and published all of it. Rand, babe, your entire brand is Senator Right to Privacy. You're the libertarian guy, the Fourth Amendment guy. It's your family legacy. Your entire political career has been about warning us about government overreach. You printing someone's diary is like AOC wearing a gown that says tax the poor.
Rand Paul built his entire political identity around privacy, personal liberty, and keeping government out of people's lives. Yet now, according to Maher, he's turning Fauci's private diary into political ammunition. That contradiction is exactly why the AOC punchline lands so hard. It's like watching someone campaign on one principle while doing the exact opposite the moment it becomes convenient. More importantly, Maher isn't even defending Fauci here. He's attacking something bigger, this insane political habit of treating every bad decision, every disagreement, and every person you despise as evidence of criminal behavior. Fauci can be arrogant. Fauci can be wrong. Rand Paul can absolutely challenge him. But if every political fight ends with "lock him up," then we're no longer debating policy, we're just weaponizing outrage. Before moving on to the next part, please take a moment to hit the like button and share this video with your loved ones. Now, let's dive deeper into today's main topic.
Dr. Fauci, depending on your politics, is either an esteemed, dedicated public servant or a vain, flawed bureaucrat. Well, it's both. Life's complicated that way. You know what's really complicated? Science. And Dr. Fauci definitely got some of that wrong. He said if you got the vaccine, it was highly unlikely you'd get COVID or transmit it. Wrong. Okay, but that's not because it was part of some self-dealing plot. Things were changing rapidly. They just got it wrong. That's science. Reports of Fauci deliberately lying are based on lazy research, including from centrists that got timelines wrong or transposed. But Fauci could be unforgiving, too. In his diary, he described a dispute with another medical advisor, Scott Atlas, who wanted to keep the schools open, which Fauci told his dear diary borders on criminal. No, he's not a criminal, and you're not a criminal, which should be obvious since only 2 months later, when Atlas resigned, Fauci wrote, the one area he was correct was in saying that school children are not the drivers of the outbreak. Okay, so can we not call people criminals just for the part they got wrong? Look.
That is exactly where this story gets uncomfortable for both sides. Fauci's critics want every mistake to become proof of a conspiracy, while his defenders spent years acting as if questioning him was somehow questioning science itself. Maher is cutting through both narratives. Fauci got things wrong. That matters. Public officials making decisions that affect millions of people should absolutely be challenged when those decisions fail. But being wrong is not the same thing as being corrupt. And changing your position as evidence changes is not automatically a confession of guilt. The real problem comes when certainty turns into arrogance. Fauci was angry enough at Scott Atlas to describe his position as bordering on criminal, only to later acknowledge that Atlas had been right about at least one important point. That is the irony Maher is exposing. The same political culture that complains about opponents criminalizing Fauci was perfectly comfortable using that language against people who challenged Fauci. Science is supposed to survive disagreement. The moment disagreement becomes a moral crime, it stops looking like science and starts looking a lot more like politics. And if that sounds like political disagreement turning into something far more personal, watch what happened when Fauci and Rand Paul finally went at each other face to face. The argument was no longer just about the science, it became a fight over who was telling the truth, who was misleading the public, and who should bear responsibility. This is where the gloves came off.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function. Let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans,
Right.
you're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about.
Let's
Okay,
read
you
from the
get one
NIH
person.
Let's read from the
Madam
NIH
Chair, can I
definition of
answer the
gain of
question?
function. This is your definition that you guys wrote. It says that scientific research that increases the transmissibility among mammals is gain of function. They took animal viruses that only occur in animals and they increased their transmissibility to humans. How you can say that is not gain of function?
It is not.
It's a dance, and you're dancing around this because you're trying to obscure responsibility for 4 million people dying around the world from a pandemic.
And let's let Dr. Fauci.
I have to, well, now you're getting into something. If the point that you are making is that the grant that was funded as a sub-award from EcoHealth to Wuhan created SARS-CoV-2, that's where you are getting. Let me finish.
We don't know.
Well,
we don't
wait
know
a minute.
If it did
I
come
can-
from the lab, but all the evidence is pointing that it came from the lab, and there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including yourself.
I totally
This committee
resent,
will allow the witness to respond.
I totally resent the lie that you are now propagating, Senator, because if you look at the viruses that were used in the experiments, that were given in the annual reports, that were published in the literature, it is molecularly impossible.
No one's saying those
It
viruses
is-
caused it.
it
No
is
one is alleging that
molecularly-
those viruses caused the pandemic. What we're alleging is that gain-of-function research was going on in that lab, and NIH funded it.
That
You
is
can't
not-
get away from it. It meets your definition, and you are obfuscating the truth.
I'm not
Paul,
obfuscating the truth.
Senator
You are the
Paul's
one.
time is expired, but I will allow the witness to.
Let me just finish. I want everyone to understand that if you look at those viruses, and that's judged by qualified virologists and evolutionary biologists, those viruses are molecularly impossible
No one's
to
saying
result
they are. No
in
one's saying those viruses
SARS-CoV-2.
caused the pandemic.
Senator Paul,
We're saying they are gain-of-function viruses because they were
they're not.
animal viruses that became more transmissible in human, and you funded it.
And
won't
you
admit the truth.
and you
Senator
implying
Paul, your time has expired, and I will allow witnesses who come before this committee to respond.
and you are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individual. I totally resent
could
that.
have
And
been.
if
And it
anybody
could
is
have been.
lying here, Senator, it is you.
Now, the argument has completely blown past a scientific disagreement. Rand Paul isn't asking Fauci to explain a bad prediction anymore. He's putting the words lying to Congress on the table. Fauci responds just as aggressively, telling Paul flat out that he doesn't know what he's talking about. Within seconds, a hearing about research funding turns into two powerful men essentially accusing each other of dishonesty. And that is exactly the problem Maher was talking about. Watch how quickly uncertainty disappears from the room. Paul presents the funding question as a matter of accountability and insists Fauci is obscuring the truth. Fauci treats Paul's interpretation as fundamentally wrong and fires back that the senator is the one spreading a false accusation. At that point, nobody is debating like this is a complicated scientific question anymore. They're fighting over guilt, responsibility, and credibility. The most revealing moment comes when Paul connects the argument to responsibility for millions of deaths. That is when Fauci visibly snaps, because now the accusation is no longer about terminology or a grant, it carries an enormous moral charge. And Fauci throws it straight back at him. This is what happens when science gets dragged completely into political warfare. Every disagreement becomes deception, every disputed fact becomes a scandal, and every opponent has to be exposed as a liar. Fauci and Rand Paul weren't just arguing over gain of function anymore. They were fighting over which one of them America should trust. That battle over credibility didn't stay inside the hearing room for long. Once Fauci, Rand Paul, and that private diary were thrown into the same political firestorm, the whole thing became almost impossible for late-night television to ignore. The Daily Show took one look at the spectacle, the accusations, the outrage, and the obsession with Fauci's every move, and turned the entire controversy into exactly what American politics had already become, a punchline.
I'm no body language expert, but we're going to have one in a few minutes. Let me show you this. You ever see Mr. Burns on The Simpsons? I still love The Simpsons, and he did this thing with the hands a lot. Yes, fingertips on fingertips. What do you make of that? It says something.
It has to say something, right? Otherwise, this whole segment would be stupid. I'd look like the biggest dipshit on TV. And while I have a body language expert here, the president going like this, that's no...
Fauci invoking the Fifth Amendment is politically explosive, absolutely, especially after years of bitter fights with Rand Paul. But invoking a constitutional right is not, by itself, proof that somebody is guilty. Yet once the political machine gets moving, apparently even the way Fauci holds his hands becomes another piece of evidence. And notice how far this has drifted from the original debate. It's no longer just, what did Fauci get wrong? What did the government fund? What should Americans have been told? Now it's body language, television outrage, accusations, and everyone desperately searching for the next viral gotcha. That's where Maher's argument starts looking even more relevant. Fauci should face tough questions. His record should be challenged. His decisions should be scrutinized. But when criticism turns into an obsession with proving that every word, gesture, or private thought reveals some hidden crime, accountability starts looking a lot more like political theater. The irony is brutal. A debate that was supposedly about restoring trust in public institutions has become another spectacle guaranteed to make Americans trust those institutions even less. But the obsession wasn't coming from only one direction. While Fauci's enemies were searching for a scandal in practically everything he did, Maher argues that the other side made an equally dangerous mistake. They stopped treating Fauci like a fallible public official and started treating him like a cultural hero. And once politics, identity, and celebrity entered the equation, the debate was no longer just about science.
And that is the place where I have a problem with the hero worship of Anthony Fauci, because it seems fame is a drug with a 100% addiction rate. Have you read some of the shit in Fauci's diary? Last week I played a game here called Who Said It, Fauci or Trump? Let's play. It is not hyperbole to say I am the most famous and talked about person in the country. The nurses went absolutely wild to see me. I am such a valued spokesperson and a good communicator. One person said that Tyra Banks was sexy, but I was even sexier than she was. None of that is Trump. That's all Fauci. Writing to himself at 80. Why? So we can read it back when he's 100 and remember what a hot piece of ass he was at 80?
That may be the most uncomfortable part of Maher's argument, because he's no longer talking about one bad policy or one wrong prediction. He's talking about identity. Once pandemic behavior became a way of proving which political tribe you belong to, Fauci stopped being viewed as just another government official whose decisions could be questioned. For many people, he became a symbol, and criticizing the symbol started to feel almost like attacking the tribe itself. That is where healthy skepticism gets dangerous in both directions. One side wanted to turn Fauci into a criminal. The other side came dangerously close to turning him into an untouchable authority. Neither reaction leaves much room for the messy reality that scientists can be respected, influential, and still spectacularly wrong about important things. Maher's real warning here is about what happens when public health becomes celebrity culture. The moment applause, political loyalty, and social status start surrounding a scientist, the question is no longer simply whether the evidence is right. You also have to ask whether the person at the center of it all is still capable of hearing that he might be wrong. And that is exactly where Maher is about to go next, because once Fauci became famous, Maher thinks something else started changing with him. At some point, accountability has to mean more than picking a side. Question everyone. Demand the facts and let the evidence speak for itself. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.